Underneath, we want to drain the coolant out. There's no drain on the radiator, so underneath where the lower radiator hose is, you want to put a drain bucket, and we'll use some hose clamp pliers, loosen up the hose clamp. You want to make sure this is also cold. The engine's cold when you do this. You don't want to do this with hot coolant. Loosen that up. And then just grab the hose, try to rock it back and forth a little bit. And be careful not to splash yourself. If you squeeze this hose clamp far, it will lock in place. So just use some different hose clamp pliers, and you can slide that off. It's a little bit easier. And just let the coolant drain out nice and slow. Take this radiator hose off. We're going to use the hose clamps. Move these hose clamps. If you squeeze them all the way, they kind of lock. Just be careful of your fingers. Oh, sometimes you just have to hold them. Move it down. Slide that off. Want to loosen up the fan clutch. You want to use some type of fan clutch tool. This one is a 36 millimeter. Set that up. This one attaches to the air hammer. And just loosen it up a little bit. There we go. You just got to crack it free. And you can loosen up the rest by hand. Although we're not going to be able to move it because the cage is going to be in the way, the fan shroud. Disconnect this connector right here. Push down on the tab. Slide it back. If there's a little lock tab on there, you got to push that back. Use a 10 millimeter socket. Take these two bolts out up on top. Slide that bolt out. Do the same on the other one. You want to pop these lines out of this bracket right here. You can use a pry bar or a screwdriver. Just pry those back out of the way a little bit. There's a push pin right here. Just pop that off. There is a push pin on the bottom as well. That one you could just slide off like that. Just get underneath there with a screwdriver or a pry bar. Slide that out. And then you just want to slide this up a little bit just to get it loose. Now we'll loosen up the fan. It's probably going to rub on the shroud. Pop off. Slide it out of the way a little bit. And grab the fan shroud. Slide up. And you kind of got to work together with the fan shroud and the fan. We have to get over this area of the radiator. Just be careful. Just push that forward. And kind of work it together. Watch the water pump if the fan gets stuck on the bolts. And it slides right out. And use a 13 millimeter socket, take these bolts out. You want to separate that. If it's on there a little bit, just take a rubber mallet, give it a few taps, then you can separate them. Now slide this in position, get the bolts started. We're going to take this push pin off the old one, just like that. There's only one. Transfer it over to the new one. We go to put the new one on. So with the fan shroud, we're going to just take this, slide it in position. This is going to go right here, and then push the push pin in. And we're just going to hold the fan right in that location. Slide the fan and the shroud right down. And you just got to get it past where the filler neck is, where the radiator hose is going to go. And there's a couple buttons down below that need to line up on the radiator. Just try to get those to line up where it sits. You can tell they're lined up if you grab the bottom of the fan shroud and try to pull it out and it stays in position. That's good. And then right here, that just has to clip in. It's still good. Get the fan started. Now tighten down the fan clutch onto the water pump. And if you have a wrench that fits, you can use that, or just a big adjustable. And just give it a good few taps with a hammer. If you have the ability to hold the water pump from spinning, if you have a special tool that'll hold that, then do that. But otherwise, just get this lined up. Give it a couple taps. That'll be tight. And plug the connector in. Lock it down. And put these two bolts in. Tighten both of those down. And put this hose on. Slide that on. If there's a clamp on there, put that clamp on. Now put the hose on. And tighten down the clamps. Take the clamp, put the clamp over the hose. Get the hose on the radiator. And tighten down the clamp. Just snug and just make sure it's not loose. That looks good. Now add your appropriate coolant and level. You want to make sure you put the radiator cap back on, snug it up. Make sure you add fluid over where the reservoir is to the appropriate level. You want to make sure you run the vehicle for about 10 minutes, constantly checking to make sure it's not overheating and looking at the level. You never want to open the radiator cap when it's hot. After it's run about 10 minutes and the engine's warmed, you can shut the vehicle down, let it cool down, and adjust the levels accordingly.